Hello! Welcome back to my channel. So today I'm going to be talking about all the books that I read in October. I am honestly a little ashamed to admit how many books I read this month. I only read 4. Not my proudest moment here. Every month I tell myself I'm gonna read more books this month and then I don't. So like something gets in the way, life gets in the way, and I only read like 5, maybe 6 max. I don't know why. Like I don't know what's going on. I used to read like 10 books a month. And I know that's like not a lot for some people here on BookTube, but it was a lot for me. And 4 is like just a little shameful. However, I would have read more, and I blame the fact that I only read 4 books on one specific book that I read that took me almost the entirety of October to read, that I actually won't even be able to talk about in this video today because I'm still reading it. I was gonna film this and upload this by like November 2nd. That was like my plan. And I was still reading this book and I was like, you know what? Let's just push it like to the end of the week. I'll give myself an extra like 2-3 days to finish it. Should be absolutely no problem. And guess what? I didn't finish it. What a shocker. So I was like, you know what? Whatever. I'll give myself this weekend. That should be enough time for me. And then I'll finish the book and I'll be able to talk about it. And you know what? I don't care if I finished it within the first week of November. It doesn't matter. I'm still adding it in this video. And I still didn't finish it. And here I am accepting my fate and the fact that I didn't finish it, swallowing that pride and saying, you know what, I failed. So yes, 4 books. I will say, even though I only read 4 books in October, October was a great month for reading in the sense that every book I read was good. Every book I read I enjoyed. I didn't have anything under 4 stars in October. October was just banger after banger. October truly delivered. So the first book I'm gonna just briefly touch on because I've spoken about it probably like 50 times now. It was a reread. It was Interview with the Vampire by Anne Rice. I read this for the first time last year in October and I really enjoyed it. I gave it 4 stars, but I felt like after reading it, there was more that I could have taken from it. I felt like it had the potential to be a 5-star book. I don't know, it just didn't get there for me within that first read. And immediately after reading it, I was like, I want to reread this because I feel like I said, it had more potential to be a 5-star read for me. And after reading it again this October, it became a 5-star read for me. I reread it not only because I wanted to reread it anyway, but also because I decided I want to continue with the rest of the Vampire Chronicles series by Anne Rice. I think there's like 14 books, which is a lot for me. I don't typically read series or honestly really enjoy reading series that much just because it's a lot of time that you have to dedicate to reading one specific story with one set of characters. Obviously, the longer the series, the more it's going to develop and shit and whatever, but one book series cannot change that much. So because I don't really enjoy that, just like reading book after book after book of like the same things, I tend to stay away from series, but I am interested in completing this one, and I like how the one that I am interested in completing is like 14 books long, but I am giving myself all of 2021 to try and do that. The entire year I will have to reading 14 books in a series, and I think that's more than enough time to space them out because that's just a lot of books and a lot of time. I have explained the plot of this book probably like 100 times now, but for the sake of doing the booktube thing, I will explain it again. But we're gonna go through it fast. Okay, so we got Louis. He is your ordinary guy, chillin'. Except he's not. He's a vampire, and he's giving an interview to an interviewer, and he's talking about how he became a vampire and his life as a vampire with his vampire companions. We have Lestat, the vampire that turned him into a vampire, and we have Claudia, the child vampire. I love vampires. I'm obsessed with all things vampire, and I really love what she does with vampires in particular. They're a little bit more, I would say, tragic than just like monsters. She really dives deep into like their emotions and what they're thinking to make them more human-like, while at the same time not ignoring that they're still predators and have to live as such. And I like that she doesn't ignore that fact, because a lot of times, at least what I see that's done with vampires in books, is that the more human that they are made to be, the more the story tends to divert away from the fact that they're still predators. They still have to hunt like living things for their nutrients. And I mean, this isn't like a paranormal romance, so obviously when you read a paranormal romance, that's not going to be the focus of the book, but I don't know. I wish that more vampire books still paid attention to the fact fact that they are still predators. They're literally vampires, and that's what I think Anne Rice does really well, in my opinion. She's making a predator as human as she possibly can without minimizing the fact that they're still technically like monsters. The character arc of Claudia in this book is honestly fascinating in the sense that it makes you really think about things that you probably never would in your life. Claudia is 9 years old when she's turned into a vampire, and as we all know, vampires do not age physically, but mentally and emotionally they do. So as the years go by, she eventually is a grown woman mentally and emotionally living in a 9-year-old child's body, and she absolutely loathes her existence, but she uses her situation, I guess, to her advantage in doing her vampire things. She makes a predator as human as possible without minimizing the fact that they're still monsters, they're still predators, they're still gonna do bad things. So this was amazing, even better the second time, 5 stars. So the second book that I read in October is also a vampire book. Now you must be thinking, Louisa, do you ever get tired of reading about vampires? No. So the next book I read is Carmilla by Sheridan Le Fanu. Carmilla follows a young woman living with her father as they give another young woman named Carmilla a place to stay for a few months due to circumstances that you read in the book. I gave this 4.5 stars. I really enjoyed it, but I couldn't give it 5 stars because I had wished the ending was different, I guess. I don't know. The ending was fine, and I expected the ending was going to end the way it did, but I wished it was just a little bit more dramatic or like theatrical and a little bit less coincidental. Obviously, I'm not going to say too much because it's the ending and I don't want to just spoil the ending. But yes, I like drama. I like mess, and that's not really what I got at the end of this, but that's okay. I didn't need it, but because that was missing, I couldn't give it 5 stars, but 4.5. So it was really interesting reading this because this is the predecessor to Bram Stoker's Dracula and kind of actually inspired Dracula. I really liked this book in particular because the vampire in it is a young woman as opposed to a man, which is more common within vampire literature. It was also really interesting and cool to see and recognize what in Dracula was inspired by this book. For example, being bit by a vampire in both stories, Carmilla and Dracula, is turned into an illness rather than the victim just dying, which is what happens in a lot of other vampire books. Also, Dracula's female characters, similar to those in Carmilla, really drive the story rather than just being in the background or like not as useful as one might expect, I guess, from a book about vampires written in the 19th century. So if you're interested in vampires or you like vampires and you're interested in reading more about what kind of started vampire literature and early vampire works, I guess, such as Dracula, I would also suggest picking up this one because, like I said, this one came before Dracula, it inspired Dracula, and it's super short, so that is Carmilla. The next book I read is The Strange Case of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde by Robert Louis Stevenson. This book is about a scientist named Dr. Jekyll who essentially wants to release or unleash, if you will, his bad side or second nature. This book was a wild ride in the sense that it was told in like a murder mystery kind of way. The way everything unfolded by the end was just crazy, and even though the reader is pretty much aware of what's going on the entire time, like if you know the synopsis of the book, like you get it, you know what's happening, it was still like pretty shocking at times, I'm not gonna lie. Had me on my toes a little bit. I don't want to say too much about this book just because since it is so short, there's not too much I can say without spoiling stuff, but I will say I thought the way that human nature was explored in this book was really interesting. I mean, that's like the whole point of the book, but mostly in the idea that it really highlights the fact that you are who you are. We don't have bad sides. All your sides are you. Every side of you makes up who you are. So your bad sides, your good sides, your whatever sides, it's all you. So I thought this was a great read. Made me super uncomfy at times, so I got what I wanted. 5 stars. The final book that I read in October was I'm Thinking of Ending Things by Ian Reid. I'm going to refrain from saying a synopsis of this book just because before reading it, I had heard that going into it blind was kind of the best way to go into it, and that's what I did, and after doing so, I agree with that statement, but I will say, before reading this, I heard that it was being compared to an A24 horror film such as Midsommar or Hereditary, and I completely agree with that comparison. I love horror films like that, where you kind of just don't really know what the fuck is going on the entire time, and that's exactly what this book was. If you like that kind of stuff, I would recommend this to you. If you don't like that kind of stuff, don't read this. Absolutely not. Do not pick it up. Don't even look at it. I'm not gonna lie, the entire time I was reading this, I was so sure of myself. I was like, I know exactly what's going on. I know exactly how this is gonna end. This book cannot fool me. And then the ending came, and it was not at all what I expected, and I was confused, to say the least. It was not at all what I was expecting. All that being said, I thought it was great, but I wasn't like blown away, I guess. I feel like I kind of expected more out of this book than what I got, but what I got is also not at all what I was expecting, so I don't know. It was a lot. At first I gave it 4.5 stars because I felt like it didn't deserve a complete 5-star rating, but then after like an hour afterwards and pondering what I had just read, I lowered my rating to just 4 stars. I took away the 0.5. It still has 4 stars for me, so I'm thinking of ending things. So those are all the books I read in October. Let me know if you read any of the books that I read. Let me know what you read in October. Hopefully next month I read more books. You know, that is truly a goal that I'm hoping to achieve. Reading more books in the month and not reading one book for a month. That we don't want, that we're gonna avoid. But yes, that concludes today's video. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed. I'll see you all next time.